Speaking of Kristi, we are excited to have her back today. Kristi, how are you doing today?
I am freezing. It is 19 degrees here in New York. It's
Everybody needs
Fahrenheit.
everybody needs to come to Utah because it's winter here, but it's a beautiful sunny day. We might go for a walk outside, and the ski resorts are just phenomenal. So anybody who wants to come to Utah and ski with me, send me a message and we'll make it happen.
I am very jealous of all people in the chat right now who are telling me how beautiful and sunny and warm it is. It sounds like California is definitely where I should be right
Yep.
now. And I'm not, so I'm kind of sad about that.
California would be nice, but enjoy the weather, the winter. Hopefully you get snow if it's that cold.
No, just cold.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, so we're talking about goals today.
We are talking about goals today. And I think, it's so funny. I think I would have probably put this in the first boot camp series that we would have done just because customer goals is where everything starts.
Yep.
But I don't know, January, beginning of the year goals, like new year, new me, new customer goals. I don't know, it felt like it fit time wise. So I'm super pumped for us to be focusing on this in this month's session. And I intentionally, Dave, didn't put this on last week's session because I knew that there would still be people out enjoying the holiday season and still extending their PTO. And so I booted it to week 2 just because I didn't want anyone to miss it.
And everybody's back now, and a huge audience today, Kristi. So no pressure. But we've got a massive audience online. And everybody, let's chat. Let us know what your questions are. I'm going to jump off camera and I'll just run the chat and the questions, and I'll jump back on Kristi at the end to help facilitate a Q&A.
Sounds great. And so just a friendly reminder to everybody, would love it if you've got questions as we go through. Don't use the hand raise functionality. Just drop your questions into the Q&A functionality that you'll see in your Zoom browser bar at the bottom of your screen. Otherwise, you can drop questions in the chat and let the community participate and answer them for you and with you. Dave will obviously be there answering things along the way, but super excited to get started. So let's jump right back in. Week 2, customer goals. So we're going to talk about today customer goals. Like, I want to make sure that we're all really tight and clear on what this means, like what goals are, how to think about them, how to design them, how to identify them with your customers, how to track them, and how to achieve them. I will tell you the number one, I think, challenge a lot of folks have is like getting to the goal, right? And I'll give you some examples. I actually even have like a little role play that I'll do by myself, which will be funny, but just to help you with a dialogue and help you understand how to unpack the conversations that you're having with your customers to get to goals. So without further ado, we're going to jump right in. And so for those of you who know me or follow me on LinkedIn, I love quotes. And so I always like starting with a quote because I think I don't know, for me, I just really enjoy that. So I started looking up quotes about goals, and I'll tell you, like, everyone had something where it was like, setting goals is the first step to this or that or whatever. And I was like, you know what? Let's condense that. Setting goals is the first step. It doesn't matter where you're going, what you're trying to achieve. It's all about setting goals, right? This is how you're going to like design everything you do with your customers from this point on. So if you are starting conversations with your customer, and it doesn't matter if your customer has been with you for 10 years, and if they have, good for you, or if they're a new customer, they just closed in Q4, you're super excited to bring them on board, it doesn't matter. If you don't have goals established with your customers, you're never going to know where you need to go with them and when you get there, right? So it's so critical. So my first thing, setting goals is the first step. So don't do anything else. Let's just make sure with all your customer conversations, and January is the perfect time of year. Everyone is doing like a fresh restart. So even if your customer has been around for a while, and maybe even if it's not their fiscal calendar year, or maybe it's not yours, it doesn't matter, right? January just feels like an appropriate, safe time, and you can always jump in and say, you know what, let's make sure that we're establishing our goals for this year, and let's get some things on paper so we can be really intentional about achieving those over the course of the next couple of months. So I did want to also include a definition, right? So goals, I feel like people have generally the right idea about what a goal is, but I want to include a formal definition here. And so the second part you'll notice here is bold, and that's actually what I thought we'd focus on for today's session when we talk about customer goals and how to get there. And so I want to start with This is an aim or a desired result. And so I just love the simplicity of that, to be honest with you. I know that we all talked about like desired outcomes or goals or targets or what it is that we're trying to achieve. It doesn't matter what we call it, right? At the end of the day, we have to get to that result. And that result might look very different from all your customers, even if your platform or solution or services does one main thing. Your customers are going to have different ways to measure the effectiveness of that. And so that's what we're going to hone in on today. It's not anything to do with your platform, right? It doesn't have anything to do with your product or its features. We need to back away from that. And like I said, my role play later will give you a perfect example of how we need to get our customers away from thinking about goals in terms of our product or our solution, and think about the business impact using that product or that solution or those services is going to have on their business. And that's what we're going to drive towards. Because at the end of the day, if your goal is that your customer is using your product and your customer's goal is that they're using your product, I think you're both thinking about it wrong, right? It should be about what is the impact of using that product effectively. So let's jump in. So first thing I like to think about is when we're designing your goals with your customers, I want to walk you through kind of like five parts that I always say are critical in order for us to get to that end result. And so the first is just starting with a conversation. You have to know how to identify the goals with your customers. You have to have a dialogue with them. You can't make assumptions. You can't think that based off of what your other, 1,000 customers are doing, that this customer obviously would want to achieve the same outcome. You can't make assumptions. You have to have a dialogue, right? And so I'll tell you, we have, at Client Success, we're having conversations with our customers often about what it is that they're trying to achieve. I think now we're being more intentional about getting to that ROI with them and helping guide them in terms of how they think about the effectiveness of the partnership. And, that takes conversation. It's not something you can achieve over email. It's not a flash in the pan question you're going to ask once. We like to actually formulate like an entire meeting or session, and whether that is 30 minutes or an hour, depending, right? We want to make sure that there's a conversation with some back and forth and where we can help and lean in, but they're coming to us and also sharing with us what's going on in their business. And so if I could tell you anything, it's start with a conversation. Have an engaging dialogue with your customers and understand what it is that they're trying to do in their business and how you can help support that. Number two is you've got to help your customers understand what's possible with your solution. So what I find is, I talk to customer success professionals all the time, and I'll tell you, I've asked them, I said, do you know, and I'll ask individual contributors, right? For every customer in your book of business, are you clear, crystal clear on the business impact that you're being measured upon for each of your customers? And 98%, I'll say, and I feel like 98 is safe, will say no. They don't have a good handle on this with all their customers. And you know what they tell me? Their customers don't know what their goals are. And that seems to be the biggest challenge, is that our customers are coming into the partnership, and some of them, right, this might be the first time that they're buying technology or a product or software. And so they haven't even thought about measuring the effectiveness or the ROI. They just know that like practically in their day-to-day, there's challenges that they need to solve for. Maybe it's driving efficiency. Maybe they need to save time. Maybe they need a better way to do something. And so they're thinking about it practically in terms of how it might drive efficiency or make their lives better or their team's lives better. But really, if you're saving somebody time, great. What are they doing with the time that they've now gotten back, right? And then how is that now translating to the business impact, right? So it's helping them understand that is probably the first level of thought that will go into this. And we're going to need to keep going. And so if you've attended any of my boot camps, probably in either August or October, I talked about the fact that at Client Success, I actually helped the team. We designed 7 core business objectives that we believe are key to why generally anyone, would buy a customer success management solution. Right. So it's very specific to us. And we found that helping our customers think about it through that lens helped us focus and then get down that rabbit hole, really honing in on what their goals actually are. And so if you can help them that way, or help them understand what other customers are doing, or help them understand what's possible, it will help you get to that end goal of defining what their goal is. Number 3 is making sure that they're smart. And we're going to unpack SMART goals. So if you are not familiar with that as an acronym, do not worry. It's, I think, one of my next couple slides. We'll unpack that, but definitely making sure that you have, specific, measurable, attainable, achievable, realistic, time-bound goals is going to be important. So we'll spend some time talking about that as well. And then number 4, designing a plan to achieve those goals, right? It is great if you can get to identifying them, but it's not going to be helpful for anybody if we don't know how we're going to achieve it. And so this is where, you as a CSM, or if you're a CSM leader or CS leader, right, working with your team to understand, great, if we know that this is where they got to go, how are we going to help them get there? Now, for most of us as CSPs, right, a customer success professional, we're not set up that we are, doing the work for our customers, right? We're not set up as a services extension. Most of us are there to help ensure that our customers understand how to use our product, maybe provide some strategic consultation in terms of how to guide them. But at the end of the day, it's the work that your customers are doing with your product that will help them get there. But your customers need your help. Right? They need you to help guide them and create a plan so that they understand how to get there, right? And what are the things that they should be doing, and helping them keep on track, right? How many times have I, set out even for a goal of mine and gotten distracted by 8 other things or 10 things or a new goal or something else, right? The shiny red ball. And so you've got to help your customers stay on track. And so making sure that you've got a plan and that you guys are managing and working towards that plan is really, really great, right? It's gonna be instrumental in the partnership. It's going to help them really kind of achieve that, right? And this is all through the orchestration of change management, which again, that will be a whole nother episode in one of our upcoming boot camps, change management. But yes, you got to be their guide. The last thing I would say is you've got to figure out a way to track this. It is great if you identify those goals. It is great if you have a plan to achieve them, but you have to have a way to measure. You have to know when you've achieved that goal, right? Or if you're going off track, or if you're behind, or if you're ahead, great. But you need to be able to know when you've achieved that goal. And so that is going to be a critical last step there, is having a tracking mechanism that will enable you, your customer, your leadership team, your company, whomever, to understand, hey, now that we know what our customer's goal is, are we achieving that with them, right? Because it's not going to help anybody if you've got this plan and these goals and don't know what happens next. So I would say, if I'm giving you tips and 5 things you should focus on in terms of how to work with your customers on this, how to think about goals within your customer business, start with that conversation, help them understand what's possible, make sure they're SMART goals, design your plan, and figure out a way to track it. Now, that in itself could almost be a webinar, right? Just those 5 things, but we'll continue to unpack each of these. So obviously, number 1 was have a meeting. I don't need to have a slide here to tell you how to have a meeting with your customers. I'm just going to tell you and guide you and say, get a call scheduled with your customer and start to talk about the business impact that they expect your solution to drive for them, and really spend that time to kind of go deep with them. So the second thing I talked about is help your customers understand what's possible with your solution. Now, if you recall, just a few minutes ago, I talked about the fact that at Client Success, when I came on board as a leader here, I said, okay, you know what? The best way for us to help our customers, define and design their goals is if we guide them there, right? And so what I said was, I've been a CS leader, the whole second half of my career. And what I know to be true about buying customer success software, and I've done this a time or two, is that these were always the business objectives that I would pitch to our CEO and CFOs to get that budget. And I will tell you, in every role I've ever held, I always got to purchase my solution. I always got the budget approval, because I was very clear in helping my leaders understand that there are 7 things I'll be able to achieve for the business with this product, right? And so for us, it was the democratization of data, right? Being able to give everybody access and visibility to the data about our customers, right? And making sure that everyone has access to it, that it's accurate, it's current, it's available, and that they can use it. We need to operationalize our processes. How many of you have a wiki that has a whole bunch of playbooks or something that lives in there, right? And you've got your processes that live somewhere. Maybe it's an Excel spreadsheet, maybe it's a Word doc, it's a wiki, who knows? But you can't operationalize them really well without a solution. And whether that be our CRM or a customer success management solution, it's going to help you operationalize your process. And so that was the second one for me. The third was driving efficiency. My CSMs, my team can be more efficient in the work that they do if they have a product like this to help orchestrate that. The next one was mitigating risk, being able to identify unhealthy customers or customers who are not behaving like good customers, so we can help intervene and get ahead of that risk so we can mitigate any long-term effects. Identifying growth. For those of you who are CS professionals managing revenue, I'm sure you're also being tasked with looking at net revenue retention and growing your book of business. Well, you need to identify what customers are ready for that growth discussion. And so having a solution like this would give us that visibility to broker those conversations at the right time. The sixth one there is increasing visibility. And so a little bit different than the democratization of data, but giving visibility to everybody about what's happening, what's the state of the union. And so this was just really big for us in terms of how the company rallies around a customer, right? Because it wasn't just about our CS or CX team that had that visibility, but giving everyone in the company the ability to understand how our customers are using our solution, what they're doing with us, how they're engaging, what their sentiment is, right? All the data that lives there, being able to make sure that everyone can see that at any time. So all engagements feel very fluid, and we can help orchestrate a good experience as a result of that. And the last one, which I feel like might be the word of the year, but scaling. And not only scaling, but scaling with ease, right? How do we do more with less? How do we move quicker? How do we move faster, right? Smarter. And so being able to scale and all the functionality that comes to support something like that was really critical. And so this is how I designed this to help my customers figure out what their goals might be. And I'll kind of tell you how I guided them as a result of this. But what I would recommend is think about your products. Think about your solution. What are some of the business objectives that you can drive as a result of your product, right? What are some of those outcomes? Because if you can start to introduce that to your customers, it helps with the ideation process. And so that discussion, which was part one, right, to have a good, effective conversation, this is going to help your customers understand what's possible, right? Or it even helps them lock down that idea, right? Somebody might have in their head, oh, I know I want to do this thing with your product, but I can't really connect the dots between that and the ROI I might see or the business impact, right? So being able to give them something to build off of helps that conversation tremendously. We are so much more effective in getting to our customers' goals as a result of this. So putting something like this together for your business, again, these are mine for client success. Go design your own. And guess what? You don't need 7. You could have 3, you could have 1, you could have 10. It doesn't matter, right? Your business, your objectives. So you go design those. But I will tell you, if you can start to put very clear objectives in front of your customers, your conversations will just, they'll flow. They'll be so much more effective. So go figure out what those are. Now, the other thing I talked about, right, was setting SMART goals. Now, many of you are probably, very, very intimately familiar with what a SMART goal is, but SMART is an acronym that helps to put some criteria around what those goals are, right? And so starting with S, these goals are specific, and we'll kind of unpack each of these. M is measurable. A is attainable, R is relevant, and T is time-based or time-bound, right? And so you might see some variations of these, but generally this is what it looks like. Again, they might choose different words, but this is how you break down a SMART goal. And so you might be trying to figure out, okay, well, Kristi, why are you telling me this, right? Why is this important? Because in order for you to have effective goal setting with your customers, you need to be able to get to this. Right? All of your goals with your customers need to be very specific. If you have a very broad goal, it is going to be very hard to achieve that. If I just said, hey, you know what my goal is for my team? To do better. What does that mean? Right? You got to be specific. You got to hone in on, okay, what is that specificity around this goal? Right? So for me, I wouldn't say, man, I really hope my team does better, right? Does better at what? And so we might start to go and dig a little bit deeper into that until we can get very specific around what the outcome is that I would want for my team. Well, that's the same thing for all of your customers, right? You've got to get a specific outcome that they're trying to work towards. And so think about what that is. You've got to figure out what that specific item that your customer is working towards would look like. Then it has to be measurable. Now, if you remember, when I gave you the 5 points about how I think about the things you should be focused on for goal setting. That fifth one was you need a tracking mechanism. Well, now this, the M in the SMART goal, maps back to that in terms of the fact that this has to be measurable. It has to be something you can measure. So if I go back to my example with my team, now I've got to be specific. So for me, I might say, hey, CSMs, I really want us to focus on, customer advocacy. And I want to increase the number of referenceable customers that we have, right? So that is my specific goal when I think about that. So I might say, hey, I want to improve advocacy. Well, great, Kristi, how do you want to improve advocacy? Well, I want to focus specifically on referenceable customers. Great. So now I've got that specific, right? I've honed in from something broad about improving advocacy, drilled it down to referenceable customers. Well, now measurable. So now I got to put some metrics behind it. Now I might say, you know what? I want to make sure that by the end of Q1, and that's going to get into time-based, that we're improving. I want to add 100 referenceable customers into our repository. I want 100 customers that say they will absolutely recommend client success. They will help and they serve as a reference for us for any customer or prospect who's evaluating us. Great. Now I've got, it's measurable, right? I know that I have to get to 100. So it doesn't matter if I have 10 today or 50 today, my end goal is 100. And that is something I can measure. Now, the next thing I might say is attainable. Now, when I think about attainable, a question that I think was really helpful in kind of thinking about this piece of this criteria is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you would achieve this goal? Now, I believe that if we put a program in place and really targeted and honed in on creating referenceable customers, I believe that we can get there. And I would say a 8 or 9, right? So I'm comfortable that in saying that we can increase our customer advocacy program by increasing the number of referenceable customers that we have to 100. Right. And I believe that we can do that, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give us an 8 or 9, believe it's highly attainable. Now, how relevant is that? So again, thinking about in terms of a question that you might ask, again, this might be something you're reflecting back on, is on a scale of 1 to 10, how meaningful is this goal to you? So how relevant is this? Well, I know that in order for my sales team to close their deals, right? We've done some data analysis, and I know that our prospects that speak to a customer, they have a 60% higher likelihood of closing within 6 weeks of that conversation, right? So we've got a data scientist team, they've done all this analysis, great. So if my sales team is saying, hey, we've got to go and increase the number of deals that we close, Kristi, in the next 6 months, well, yeah, if I can do this, right, it's going to help the close rate. Highly relevant to our business, to the success of our sales team, to, success of our customers, right? Because advocacy is a great benchmark to measure, obviously, how successful you've been in helping your customers. So relevant, highly relevant. So I would say this is a 10 for us, if I'm giving this example. And then time-based. So what is an appropriate amount of time for me to achieve this goal, right? So I've said, increase advocacy for our company. I want to specifically focus on referenceable customers. I want to increase it to 100. I believe that this is highly attainable. It's super relevant because it's going to help support our customer base. It's going to help improve retention and growth. It's also going to help new customers coming on board. And I think that we can hit that target of 100 in 6 months, right? So it's going to take me 2 quarters to get there, right? So now I've taken this idea that I want to improve advocacy, and I've created a very specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-based goal. I've created a SMART goal by saying, I know what it is that we're trying to achieve. I know how we're going to measure it. I believe it's attainable. It's relevant to our business. And here's the timeline it's going to take us to get there. Now, listen, 6 months might be very aggressive. It might not be, I don't know, maybe we need a quarter, who knows? And so you guys have to lean in and figure out what is the appropriate time to get there. And now I might have some data that says, hey, over, looking at 2021, it took us 6 months to build to 50. And now if we want to get to 100, we can say it's going to take us 6 months again to get to 100. So, use data. Data is your friend to help you figure out what is appropriate. But sometimes you're just going to have to go check things and say, like, you know what, based on projects, based on what I know and time allocation and level of importance, here's where I believe we can get this in. And here's the timeline around that. So this is where you're going to have to help your customers. Again, your customer might come to you with this lofty I want to go increase advocacy type goal. And you're going to have to help them hone this in and say, okay, well, let's be more specific, right? What is it exactly that you want to do with advocacy, right? How are we going to measure it? So again, this is an example of how you might take a goal and break it down and take something really broad and apply this SMART strategy to this, and really start to help your customers identify goals that they actually will be able to measure and hopefully drive some ROI against. So definitely, as you're going through this process, you've got to make sure that you've got these SMART goals identified with your customers, and you got to work with them in achieving it. So take this acronym, take it seriously, start to apply these this criteria to those goals. And again, it might take a little time. I'll tell you, I've had some customers in the course of my career where we've done like 3 or 4 like working sessions to get to like 3 solid goals. And that's okay. If your customers need that level of support and guidance, you should be able to provide that for them, because at the end of the day, if they don't know where they're going, won't know if you get there, their success with your partnership and solution is going to be the key to that long-term retention and growth that you're all working towards. So without this, you really can't get there. So if you're going to invest some time, definitely go ahead and do that. Now, I also talked about the need to create a plan. Now, this is a mock-up, right, of a template that I will share with you guys when I share this recording, when we share this deck. It's just a mock-up, right? I hear people all the time saying like, oh, you know, we've got to create a success plan for our customers. We don't know where to start, what to look like. We're looking for a template. This is a guide. And it doesn't need to look like this, and it can look very different. It could feel very different. But what I wanted to do for all of you is just help you understand that it's not just enough to have those goals identified. It's not just enough to make sure that they're SMART goals. You have to make sure that you're creating a plan with your customer. Now, you don't need to be the owner of these tasks and activities. This could be them 100%. And the recurring sessions that you have with them on whatever cadence it is, you're using those to help keep them accountable and keep them on track and help guide them and coach them and lean in to helping them understand what they could achieve, right? What is possible with your solution and what should they be doing in order to achieve that goal? That is where a customer success professional becomes the expert. When you have the ability to lean in and say, we know how to get you there, right? Here's the things that you're going to do in our solution. Here's the things you might be doing outside of your solution. And again, taking that very consultative approach is not only going to help them build trust and credibility with your partners, it's also going to help them get here. And so if you look here in my sample template, I'm going to break some things down to you. This is just things that I have found have been really helpful for me in helping create plans for my customers. Now, I have 3 goals here, right? And so you're going to see objective 1, 2, and 3. It doesn't matter if your customers have 3, 5, or 1. It's irrelevant. What matters is that that goal is impactful to their business and is a direct result of your partnership. That is what you need to focus on. So if you start at the top, obviously things that are important, right? Date, I don't know, I kind of put some basics. This is your admin stuff, right? You're gonna have your date, your customer name, who prepared the plan, who approved the plan. I will always say, do not create the plan and make sure that this is the plan we're working towards. You got to get your customer to approve this, right? This has to make sense to them. They have to be on board with this. So make sure that it's getting approved. I will say almost always the best way to create this plan is collaboratively with your customers. So again, you may do a goal working session. Great. Check that box. You have a SMART goal. Awesome. You might want to do a success plan collaboration session where we say, great, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, now that we know what those goals are, how are we going to get there? Let's talk about this together. So you've got an approved by, right? Your customers leaned in and said, yes, this looks great. I'm so excited. Like, let's go do this. And then a target date, right? So this is, again, going to be that timeline that we're saying this whole plan in its totality, we're focused on completing this. That doesn't mean it's the due date for each key result or for each objective. We're saying, hey, for this, what's the target date that we're going to have this whole plan done and dusted, right? And again, these are targets. I will say almost always not almost always, 50% of the time, you might run over, right? It's very rare that I also see these things happen a lot faster, but it is helpful to just have a date that you're working towards. And so the next section here is just, how do we clearly lay out our goals? Again, my template is a mock-up. It's just an example. Create yours as you need and you see fit. But here's where you might lay out those 3 SMART goals that you've identified with your customers and list them out right there as your objective 1, objective 2, objective 3, right? Very clearly at the top of this plan, what we're working towards. Well, now we want to make sure, and for anybody who's done like OKRs, it's kind of formulating, it follows that same framework in this example of having an objective and a key result, right? So that OKR process. And so I said, okay, great. Objective 1, right? What's the name of that objective? Awesome. Put it at the top. What are the key results? What are the things that I can use to say, if I do these, it's going to help me get to that goal? Now, for anyone who follows me on LinkedIn, you may have been following my running journey. So I'm going to use this as a really great, easy, relatable example. But last year I set a goal of running a half marathon, my first half marathon. Awesome. Well, Kristi, you set a goal, right? And I said my half marathon was in September, right? So I had a very specific, measurable, right? 26 point, I don't know, it was a 26.2 or whatever I'm sorry, half was a 13.1. Sorry. I have a goal of trying to do the full. Sorry, did not do that. Half 13.1. So I knew it was measurable, right? When I crossed over the finish line, I hit that 13.1. I will have known I achieved that distance at the time there. But so how was I going to prepare for that? So the cool thing my husband and I did last year is we signed up for a whole bunch of races prior to that. And this was going to help me build to that half. So we started the year with a 5. Then we did a 7. We did a 10. We did a 15. We did a whole bunch of small races in between. And then I built to the half marathon. And so for me, those were my key results, right? I knew if I did the 5K, right? Check that box. That was going to help me build to my half. If I did the 7K, that was going to help me build. If I did that, great. What was the timeline on that? So using that same philosophy of having certain things that would help you get to that end goal, that's how you should be thinking about your key results, right? How will I know if I'm getting closer? What are the things I can measure? What are the things I could do that will help me step closer to achieving that objective? That's a great, just easy way to think about a key result. Now, in this plan that I've provided for you here, I'm giving you, great, let's lock down what that key result is, provide some details about that. Who's the owner, right? It's always, you need to just be very clear on who owns what. Now, in some of these plans, maybe as their CS professional, you own a task or activity, but otherwise your customer might own it. And so whoever the owner is, you guys are agreeing upon that in this planning session. You can use this as your tracker. And so I included things like your status, because if you don't have another place to manage your plan, in here is great. Maybe you look at this once a month, maybe you look at it once a quarter, maybe you look at it once a week, it doesn't matter. But you might want to update your status there just so that everyone in a shared place, maybe it's a shared doc, you have a status and you could say, great, I know that we're in progress, we're behind, we're ahead, awesome. Each of these key results should have a due date, and each of those should be sooner than the objective end date. So just make sure that you're building towards these things, help you achieve that end objective. And then a place to just store some notes, right? So just from a framework, just giving you some information that I have found very helpful when building out plans with my customers and having that collaborative space to go and build off of. And the last thing here is after you get through objective 1, 2, and 3, at the bottom, you'll see I have a place for metrics. And so those metrics are, what are we trying to achieve as an end result or end of those goals, right? When I achieve those, what are the metrics of measurement that will tell me that we've been successful? And so this is just a place to say, great, we want to increase this by this amount, by this time. And so making sure that you also have a way to say, well, great, did we get there, right? So was this achieved or not achieved? So again, this is a sample plan. You might have a cool place to go and store this and automate it, and that's awesome. For those of you who don't, I'm always a big fan of things like Excel and Google Sheets and Docs and all those things. As long as you can use it collaboratively with your customers, I think it's super useful and totally fine. So again, this is the sample plan. I will share this with you, but again, you do need to create a plan with your customers. Now, you guys know I try to always be platform agnostic, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about how I am doing this at Client Success. So cool plug for us, shameless plug, right? We launched our goal tracker as a result of Dave and I and the product team talking extensively about this, right? We know that we have to be able to identify and track and manage goals with our customers. It's a no-brainer. We just talked about all the reasons why. And so this is something we launched because we basically said, if we have to do this with our customers, why isn't this in our platform, right? So crazy, so silly. So we launched our goals module, and our goals module allows us to work collaboratively with our customers to identify what their goals are, set an actual and a target, right? So we have real time, how are we tracking? What is our target that we're working towards? What's the timeline, right? So is this a Q1, Q4? Is it a year goal? Does it matter? Have a period there. We can see the stage. So being able to easily say, am I in progress? Am I complete? Is this behind? Is it critically behind? Have the stage to manage it there. Track that progress. Everyone loves a green, yellow, red tracker, super easy, but we have the ability to see, how we're doing. We also have pacer marks there. So based on the day and the target end date and the goal, right? How are we on track to actually hit or meet this deadline? Pacers are super helpful for us. And then a place to add some comments and see some ownership and stuff like that. So when I think about how I'm doing this with my team today, and this is just a screenshot from our demo account, so this isn't any particular customers' data, but super helpful in helping my CSMs keep track of this with their customers, because you have to have a place to manage it. You have to have a way to measure it. And so this is how we're doing it at Client Success. I'll dig a little deeper, right? Each of these goals could be expanded on. We've got, commenting sections here. And again, not a plug for the platform, but really helping introduce to you guys the importance of this and how we're doing it. We have meetings, we have conversations to just help track, are our customers achieving these goals? These even plug into our health score. So we actually have the ability to say, hey, okay, if a customer is achieving their goals, right? If they said, we want to go and increase our NRR by 20%, if we're on pace to achieve that goal, that actually leans into their health score. And so we include goals in the health score, because if our customers are achieving their goals, isn't that what we always say, right? Your customers will stay if they're getting value and having a good experience. So why wouldn't this be part of your health scoring mechanism? So for us, this is super critical, is making sure that we know what our customers' goals are. We're tracking them with them. We're working in collaboration on plans to help get them there, and that we're leaning in to say customers that achieve their goals, they have a higher retention rate. They have a higher growth rate. That's all great for us to understand from a business perspective. Are we doing the things that we need to be doing, that our customers deserve for us to be doing with them to help them get there? So you can't manage what you can't measure. Goals helps us do that. Now, okay, no platform, no worries. I might as well be an Excel spokesperson part-time, but I will tell you, Excel, I always say this, if you listened to me ever before, Excel is the most powerful tool in the world. I'm convinced it does everything. We just don't know how to do everything in it, but it does everything. So if you don't have a place to go and manage this, if you don't have client success, if you don't have a CRM, that's okay. You can still go and track these with your customers, and you should. Remember, you can't manage what you can't measure. You have to have visibility into this. It's not good enough to go and identify the goals. It's not good enough to make them SMART goals. It's not good enough to get sign off on a plan. You have to go and work with your customers on a regular basis to help ensure that they're achieving these goals. So you have to track it. This is a sample Excel, Google Sheet, and so in this Google Sheet, which I will also share with you as a template, super easy, but you can go and build off of this, go throw your logo on it, go throw your customer's logo on it, but put your plans down, right? So in here, I've got some goals. I've got those actuals, the targets, the period, dates, stage, progress, comments, owners. And while this isn't as integrated as having it in your, CRM or customer success management solution, it's a start. And, I hate the cliche saying of like crawl, walk, run, but yes, crawl, walk, run. You have to start somewhere. This is a great place to start. So if you've got nothing else, start here. Now, I wanted to make sure I have enough time to get here, and I am watching the clock. I know that we're at 1:42. We want to leave some time for some Q&A. So I have to speed up and kind of get to this, because this is where I'm going to have a conversation with myself. You'll all get a little humor out of this perhaps. But this is reality. Now, the most important thing you can do is help get your customers to figure out what these goals are. So the blue track is me, Kristi, Customer Success Manager. And green is me, Kristi, customer who bought Client Success. And this is a dialogue that I encourage you guys to start to even do some role playing, help each other, coach each other on different questions to ask, different routes to go down. But this is not an uncommon talk track. So you might go into your customer conversation and say, great, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, we're super excited to have you on board. What goals do you have for our solution? Now, a common response always to us, right, we're a customer success management solution. I want to create a customer health score. That's not a goal. right? So great. You want to go and create a customer health score. Awesome. That's not a goal. Your business is not improving because you've built a health score. So great. I'm going to set now I'm Kristi, customer success professional. Okay. Well, what will you do with that customer health score? Mr. Customer is going to go, well, allow me to see which customers are at risk, right? Which is a perfectly valid and common use case for health score. You want to see which of your customers are healthy and who's unhealthy, right? So now me, CSP, great. What will you do once you've identified your at-risk customers? Well, we'll be able to intervene and we'll be able to get them back on track. Awesome. Now, what will happen if you get those customers back on track? Well, we'll be able to reduce our customer churn. And what will happen if you reduce your customer churn? We'll improve our gross retention rate and our NRR. Ding, 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 ding. That is your goal. So this invisible conversation that I just had with myself is real. And it's probably one that you're challenging all of your customers to have. And if you don't know how to guide them, this is an example of a dialogue that is real in our world here. And I'm sure you're going to have a similar conversation with your customers. They all have goals. You have to coach them. Now, I love 5 whys, right? So if you are not familiar with the five whys solutions planning, I think it's like root cause analysis. They use 5 whys, like the why. It's a similar framework, right? All I did is keep asking my questions to my customers to unpack. Great. What will you do with that? What will happen as a result of this? How will that improve your business, right? So I just asked questions. And I will tell you, one of the things that I look for every time I'm interviewing is intellectual curiosity. You want to know why? Because asking good, great questions changes everything about how you support your customers and the value that you bring. So this is simple. I didn't do anything. I just asked a question. I didn't have to know customer success better. I didn't have to know my platform better. I didn't have to know anything. I knew that every response that my customer gave me, I just had to come back with a question that would help me, right? Figure out, how are we going to get to a goal, a SMART goal? And so if they said, great, we'll improve gross revenue retention and net revenue retention, awesome. Now, if we take that SMART approach, I've got my goal. So that yellow box at the bottom, I'm going to improve my gross retention rate by 3% over the next 6 months. And if you do that, obviously you keep your customers longer, you have more customers to grow. So then I will be able to increase my net revenue retention by 5% over the next 12 months. Awesome. That is a goal. I've got specificity. I've got measurable metrics. I've got timelines. I believe that these are realistic and they're definitely relevant. So based off of what your customers have told you about why they came to you, why they're using your product, you've got a very clear path now on what you're working and building towards. That's how you get to your goal. Now, I know I gave you one example, and this is my real world example, but I don't know your business. I don't know your customers, and I don't know your product. So I can't give you specific talk tracks for each of yours, but hopefully you'll see what I did here, and you can take this back and you can apply it and use this same methodology to help your customers get to that same yellow box, right? Figure out what that goal is. Okay, so I did a little speedy round at the end there, which did buy me enough time so that we have plenty of time for Q&A. So I'm going to welcome Dave back from hiding behind the screen over there, and we're going to dive into some questions, and hopefully we got some good, exciting things that we can unpack together.
Awesome session so far, Kristi.
Bringing the energy. It's warming me up to keep me warm because it is so cold.
I love the dialogue back and forth too.
Well, these are like real conversations that we have all the time. And you know what? We're not alone in this. I know customer success professionals all the time are struggling with this exact thing.
Yep. It's not about, the goal isn't to implement your platform. It's to achieve a business objective. And to be able to walk a customer through that is priceless for any CSP. So we got a lot of questions. A lot of the questions are leaning towards where this process should start, and whether the sales team should start it and or maybe own it and pass the information over to the CS team. What's your thoughts on that? Who should own it? Should this start at sales? What's that interaction between sales and success, at least for that initial sale? And then, I could see going forward, CSMs might, but what are your thoughts?
I'm going to say it, Dave. I'm going to say it. You ready? It depends. It depends. There's no way. Like if you have a short sales cycle, right? If it is like, if you've got a quick, easy, low effort product to sell, and you can sell it in 2-3 weeks, it is going to be very difficult for your sales team to get to a place where they're unpacking goals and getting there, right? So you might have a long sales cycle and a very comprehensive sale and an enterprise solution to an enterprise customer where these types of conversations are organically happening. And great, you can get there. And when your customer comes on board, it is very clear why they're here and what they're trying to achieve. So it depends, right?
Yeah.
Yes, in a perfect world, would I love every sales to CS handoff to have very clear SMART goals? Yes, I would. In fact, we should train TJ on this webinar and have him and his team give me all these SMART goals. But the reality of it is, it depends on the conversations. It's who you're talking to, your product, your deal cycle. So what I would say is, if you can, at the very least, broker an introduction to the objectives and some high level conversation around what it is your customers hope to achieve. Even if you don't get to the level of specificity of a SMART goal, your sales process should absolutely start to identify that. And then you can have your CS team start to unpack it in some of those initial conversations. So perfect world, yes, sales would just give me what I need and want, and we could just dive in and hit the ground running. Reality, which is where I like to live, probably unlikely, but start with something. So for us, I know TJ does do a great job of introducing our 7 core objectives. Yeah. And so when we do get customers, we do already know what direction they want to head, and then we can start to work with them to formulate those goals. So yeah, I'm giving you a big, it depends.
I think in that perfect world, it is beautiful when the customer success professional in that kickoff can say, I know your objectives are X, Y, and Z. And so that you're not asking again, you're just clarifying and asking clarity. And then I'd say, I'll add my 2 cents. Customer success professionals, as you do this year in and year out, quarter in and quarter out, make sure you articulate that these ideals and these objectives back to the company. There's so much information that you glean from this process. And so make sure you share it and understand trends and impact product development, impact sales and ideal customer profiles. So share the information back.
Can I give one more thing on this, Dave? And I know we'll get to more questions, but one more thing I want to add is, if and when you achieve your goals with your customer, can you go celebrate them with your customer and internally? We do not do a good enough job celebrating these things. And these goals are hard, right? Moving, I mean, look, think about it for us, moving NRR 2-3 points, that's huge. Yep. That is huge. If you get there with a customer, you achieve a goal, you better schedule a time to go and celebrate that success outcome, go present it, make sure that their leaders are getting access to that data, that they as a business understand the impact you've had. So it's not enough to achieve it, go and socialize that as well.
Amen. Kristi and I are big on celebrating success. So do that. Be loud and proud in your company. Okay, here's some other questions. How do you balance customer setting goals that impact the business with goals that your product can help achieve realistically? So this is a good question. So this is basically saying, okay, I've heard from my customer that they have these business objectives, which you might have some impact, and it may be hard to connect the dots to that impact. How do you navigate that conversation with a customer?
Well, I think this is where, again, the goal planning framework that we walked through today is still applicable, right? Your customer's goal is what the goal is. You might only be able to influence a part of that. Yeah. And so if you think about even going through listen, if your customer has a goal that is so big that you only influence a little bit and they're talking to you about it, you're a partner. So embrace that and let yourself be pulled into that conversation. Now, what I would say is that if your customer has really cool, clear business goals, they're going to have to follow a similar framework. It doesn't need to be OKR, but for the sake of what I used in today's conversation, let's assume it's that. They've got their O defined. You might just be a KR, right? You might not be able to influence anything beyond a line item that says, in order for them to achieve that goal, they've got 10 things they need to do. And of those 10 things, one of those things, maybe it's 3 tactical things making up that one thing, but that one thing that you do. So you just have to understand what role your partnership and your product plays in helping them achieve that and setting some realistic boundaries around it, right? The expectation can't be, well, my goal is to go move that mountain and you're going to help me get there, right? Because I signed up for your product. well, no, we can help you take 3 steps forward, right? And the other things you do, then you have to get in a car and a bus, and then you have to figure out how to move it, but we're gonna get you there. So I think just being very realistic and clear about the influence and the impact you can have on that goal, and then how you're going to partner with them on it. But then if you can have influence outside of your product, and this is where maybe that strategic consultation comes into play and how you can coach and guide them towards that bigger goal, this is where that partnership, I think, grows legs and you really start to align yourself better and stronger with that business.
Well said. Well said. Here's a good question. In your goal setting conversations, do you take into account your customers' personal goals along with their professional business goals? So kind of interesting. Is it
Yeah.
you've got others on the other end who have professional goals, personal goals, and business goals. Where do you come into play? Where do those all come into play? Or
So
do
I
they?
absolutely, like, I think, listen, we talk about customers for life and a customer for life kind of concept. And I think Jay Nathan did a post on it this week, which we love, as he talked about, it's not keeping a logo, right?
Yeah.
As a customer, it's the people, right? And so that person's personal success and their sentiment of your business and your product, wherever they go, they bring you along, right? That second order revenue that we talk about, Dave, like, it's building those people. And so you got to figure out, for your key points of contact, how are they personally defining success with this partnership? How can you help them? And it could be a promotion. It could be giving them greater visibility. It could, listen, if I help an executive be able to participate in their board discussions because they now have really strong, accurate current data, and it starts to amplify and elevate their visibility in those discussions and give them, 10 minutes of more boardroom time talking, as opposed to them sitting back and listening to the sales team for 20 minutes. Like, that's awesome, right? And that's going to help them personally. So we've just got to figure out, great, listen, goals aside, what makes you successful? How will you personally win, grow, gain, whatever it is from our partnership, and how can I help you? And those are things I wouldn't put in our goal tracker per se, but we have places to store notes on our contacts. And I'd say definitely find a way to keep track of that and to check in periodically on it as well.
Agreed. Authentic relationships, we care about everything, that individual and their company, and want both of them successful. And there's nothing better than to have somebody come back and say, thank you. I just got promoted and I was so excited that this partnership was contributed to my promotion or some success in business. All right, next question. And if anybody will, I may allow one live question. So if anybody has a live question and you want to raise your hand in Zoom, raise your hand and we'll allow you to ask it. We'll unmute you and ask you, but or let you ask it. The next question: if your customer goals are midterm or long term, and you have an objective of first time to value delivered to be the shortest as possible, how do you manage it? So, I think the question here is: you've got an objective that you want to achieve first time to value as quickly as possible, but their key core objectives are more mid or long term. So you've got an objective, and it may conflict with some of their longer, mid, or long term, or just may not be as important to them, but it is important to you. Does that make sense?
Okay,
I
I'm gonna
guess the
repeat back
difference
to you. So,
between
I mean, is it like the example that I gave in my internal dialogue that I put on that
yeah,
screen, right? It was, customer was trying to, they told me they wanted to design their health score, but what we really found out is that they wanted to improve their NRR, right?
yeah,
NRR improvement is got to be a much further out goal. It's going to take us a year. It might take us 2 years, depending on what the problems are. That is a long-term goal. But what
yeah,
are all of the things that I can do, right? So your first time to value for me might be helping my customers create a health score so they have visibility into what their risk looks like across their book. And that might be our first time to value, right? We didn't achieve the improvement of the NRR, but this is step one in getting there. And so
yeah.
I would say is be very intentional about designing what are those milestones across along the way, right? And it could be those key results, it could be milestones, depending on how you're doing this, like goal roadmap planning with your customers. But you've got to figure out that first time to value doesn't need to be this momentous, like, we solved your problem and the partnership's over because in 3 weeks you did everything you said you were going to do. No, it's a journey, right? And that's the way we talk about it with our customers. Figure out how, like, is this a meaningful enough win, right? This is going to help support this long-term goal, but try to figure out something that is going to be more achievable in a shorter period of time so you can work to that.
Okay, so let me take it one step further.
Uh-oh.
What if the objectives that your leader and your company has set for you as a customer success professional
Mm-hmm.
don't align with your customers' objectives. So, for example, you've been given an example to get time to value in 60 days,
Okay.
right? But your customers, that is not an important objective of theirs. The time to value is an important objective. How do you balance your objectives with your customers' objectives, and who wins?
Oof. Okay, I can see where that's tough. But what I will say is if your company's objectives are not your customers' objectives, maybe you're thinking about it wrong, right? Maybe your leaders are, and I know that's a bold statement to make and say like your leaders don't know what's going on, but your customers need to achieve their goals. Your internal goals matter second, third, fourth, right? Like they're not as important. And so you've got to say, thank you, Mr. Manager. I get where we're working towards, but my customer has been very clear with me and stating that this is what they're working towards. This is still a win. Their win looks different than what you're thinking a win looks like for me. I'm going to work with them on getting towards that. And I think it's like, listen, if you have a safe place to have a real business conversation with your management team, that's the conversation you're having. Is the most important thing that we should be building towards is our customers achieving whatever value it is that they need to see. Let's find a way to measure that, because that is what we have to work towards.
Very good.
It's bold, but
it's needed. I think in today we talk about outside in approach. That's the outside in approach, meaning let's put the customer's needs ahead of ours and align our needs with theirs. Very well said. Any last comments? I know we're out of time. I'm sorry. There's a few questions. We'll maybe get them off.
I don't know. Chris Jones just made a funny comment in the chat and said, is Client Success working on any cloning technology so that we can get a few more Kristis in the CS space? I will tell you, my husband would definitely tell you that you don't need more Kristis in this world. So
thanks, Chris. Yeah, we would love that. But there's only one, the one and only. We'll celebrate her and all the goodness. Thanks to everybody for joining. This was an awesome webinar as usual. Thanks to everybody who's contributed on the comments and the questions. We want you to come back. If we can help you in between now and next Tuesday, reach out to us online and LinkedIn at our email addresses, Twitter, wherever you can find us. Reach out. We'd love to engage. But between now and then, have a great week and keep doing what you all do. Thanks, Kristi.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week.
Everyone.
Bye.